Now, for the last 3 years, South Africans have lived through various forms of disaster management. In 2020, it was the COVID-19 pandemic, and last April, it was the Durban floods. And now it's the country's electricity crisis. Year after year, small businesses seem to run into never-ending obstacles, with many struggling to survive. Now there are calls for more collaboration between government and the private sector to tackle these issues. Social investment specialist Azola Zulu joins me now to discuss this further. Thank you so much for your time, Azola. We do appreciate it. I must say that small businesses have always been neglected and sidelined because of these various disaster managements that the country has been under. And now it's another state of disaster because of our electricity crisis. How are small businesses going to survive this? And do you think enough was said in the State of the Nation address to uplift these small businesses?
Thank you for that, and good morning or good afternoon to your viewers. So I think that the energy crisis has, and along with other crises that we've also experienced over the past few years, have also brought around about opportunities to actually zero in on the kind of implementations and interventions that we need to provide, especially supporting our local communities and small businesses. So we're looking at small businesses. There is an opportunity for them to be actually brought in line, especially from a value chain creation perspective, and obviously to be brought into the broader supply chain of the country and actually promote some of these industries. So with the electricity crisis, I think that it's an imperative for small businesses to be included and involved in actually ensuring that on-the-ground implementation and rollout of these energy plans is actually effected on the ground. Thank you.
So while you say small businesses should be considered, are they actually considered though, Azola, if we really are frank and honest about this? Because it's a sector that is so crucial for our economic growth, for employment, and it contributes significantly to our GDP, yet we don't really see, if I can say, the red tape taken away for these small businesses to thrive and do well. Again, from what the president said, do you think he should have focused a little bit more on small businesses and understood the importance and the important contribution it makes to our economy?
I definitely think that the president could have zeroed in terms of, especially on the small businesses front, and also just considering that even in South Africa, the economy is actually made out of 61% of informal businesses and small businesses. So we really need to focus our approach on supporting these businesses and reducing the red tape. Yes, currently there are measures in place that the government has procured. However, it seems that little is actually happening on the ground just to resolve some of these red tape issues and bureaucracies that small companies may face. So I think one of the biggest interventions that the governments should make is actually to collaborate and engage further with the small businesses, because they are actually the ones who actually are the soldiers on the ground. So we need to also, the president needs to consider exactly a zeroed-in approach in supporting these small and local businesses and suppliers within the value chain. There is little in the plans that is really made, because even engagement to date has been really focused around engaging big business and the private and sector investors. However, social investment partners like ourselves at Chikalulu Social Investments, we are really there to support and intermediate between what happens on the ground, between the decision makers and what happens on the ground. Methodologies like community mapping and understanding the needs and challenges on the ground that are faced on the ground. Governance and legislation really currently is obviously more in a lofty ideal, and also focuses really on just coming up with a blueprint. However, we really need to have a zeroed-in approach in terms of how we can also support these suppliers.
Yeah.
Luckily, so social investors and the private sector have really, through us, through channels that Chikalulu provides, provided support to some of these community-based organizations and release forms. And I think there is an opportunity to include and involve social partners and impact partners in driving this this move forward?
Yes, I mean, the president and government often says that it's not government's responsibility only to create jobs, and they rely heavily on the private sector. But if you just look at the kind of environment and climate that businesses need to operate in, with the biggest threat being the energy crisis, you know, as much as the private sector would want to contribute and want to help small businesses, there are major challenges like the energy crisis. I just wonder, Azola, you know, your engagements, if you have any, with these small businesses, what do they find to be the biggest threat for these businesses to thrive and do well and create these jobs and to contribute positively to our economy? Is it the energy crisis?
A small part of it, as we've seen also just in engagements and through research, is that the energy crisis and electricity crisis has really played a major role in how these small businesses function, and it also inhibits and impedes some of their operations, especially during those intense load shedding schedules. But what we really have seen is that through, you know, collaborations and partnerships with the private sector, there has been some opportunities for some sort of relief to through our, you know, channels, to be able to channel to the small businesses. What they face on the ground is really, again, logistical issues. There's infrastructural issues that they also face, but I think the major part of it is actually financing and funding. Obviously, to ensure business continuity and sustainability, these businesses really cannot you know, function without some of these big capital, you know, resources that are injected into their operations. So one of the major issues, and I think is a very big focus moving forward, would be the financing and the funding, and actually even unblocking some of those challenges when it comes to, you know, the bureaucracy and the onboarding of them to actually implement some of these solutions on the ground.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for your time. We do appreciate it. And hopefully the president was watching so he can understand the many challenges that these small businesses face. That was Azola Zulu.